When you're talking about economy, not Russian economy, any economy, the last thing you want to hear is oops. Oops. When you hear oops, it means, well, how do I put it mildly? A catastrophic situation, economically catastrophic situation. In Russia's case, it's Armageddon. And I have a few oops moments for you. The countdown to Russia's economic Armageddon has begun, and stick around if you want numbers, figures, and events, because I have plenty of that coming up. Now, if you want just very short description, everything is going to hell. This is it. Okay. If you want more, let's talk about it. Howdy, everyone. My name is Konstantin. Welcome to Inside Russia, where usual Russia is explained by unusual Russian. At this channel, you will never find any BS, propaganda, or lies. Instead, you'll find plenty of truth, common sense, and logic, and some emotions too. I am Russian, and I'm a human being after all. Welcome to Weekly Economic Review. This is week 41 in review, and the goal of this ongoing series is to document Russia's economic transformation in real time. Weekly, consistent coverage gives a truer picture than isolated headlines. Every Wednesday, I track the same core dashboard. Rates, budget, fuel, revenues, prices, industries, trade, events that happen. So you can see that what actually changed from the previous week, why it matters, and where the trend is pointing. All my reports are built on verifiable public reporting, market data, and open sources. No hype, just facts and context. Now, to the analysis. The economy can be analyzed at three main levels, each with its own focus and scope. They are the individual level, also called microeconomics agents. It studies individuals, household, and businesses. Then there's microeconomy, studies specific sections or markets, and macroeconomy, studies entire national economy. And this is how I structure my weekly economic updates here at Inside Russia, and I start with microeconomic agents. Basically, it's about what impact changes in the economy have on lives of regular folks and individual companies. And I'll start with a couple stories today. The stories that concern companies and people, regular people. Now, both stories are developing, and the first is, I talked about it yesterday in a live stream when I was talking about crisis in Russia's fuel industry. So now I have continuation. So a friend of mine a couple days ago told me the story of what's happening in his company. They sell fertilizer from a city in central Russia. They use a marketplace, Russian equivalent of Amazon, to sell customers, usually small farmers or stores that resell. Orders come in hundreds of packages. Package is 10 to 20 kilo, 20 or 40 pounds. Usually a farmer or store orders 2 metric tons. The more you order, the less you pay. The cheaper it is. Well, no, that you pay more, but the cheaper the price per unit is. They use small trucks to deliver orders, just a couple tons. And everything was well until last week. They usually contract few local regular transportation companies to deliver fertilizer, and most customers are usually in the south of Russia because that's where farming happens in Russia, in the south. Last week, one transportation company, for the first time ever, refused to deliver fertilizer from Russia's central city, near Volgograd, to Krasnodar. They are not too far from each other, about 700 kilometers, 450 miles, something like that. And no luck. No, it was the first case when a transportation company would refuse an order. Why? The drivers simply can't refuel their truck in the south. One company refused the order, then another one, and then they all refused orders. The seller tried to raise the price to pay more for the delivery, but no luck. Now, all orders in Moscow that go to Moscow or Moscow province or St. Petersburg are still delivered. The transportation companies take those orders. But there are problems in the south of Russia, and, no such luck. Southern Russia is out of luck. Now, they are. This is what happened a couple days, and now there's a development for you. So I contacted my friend and asked for the situation in his company. He said that everyone is puzzled because they don't know what to do. The problem with their company is not unique. Other sellers and other transportation companies are in a similar shoes, and no one knows what to do next. Now, they are concentrating on the orders to the north of Russia, to Moscow, near Moscow. But that's, if you take south out of the equation, out of their customers, that's half of their business. Gone, just like that. Disappeared, because there's no gas. Well, there is gas down south, but it's becoming like a gamble. You can get refilled or you cannot. So either way. So no one knows what to do, and the owner of the company is getting together with the upper management, and they're trying to decide what to do next. Well, in my company that I used to work for, I was chief development officer of a large energy facility contractor, construction contractor. We, in a situation like that, we would get together for an emergency strategical session, and we would start figuring out what to do. That's probably what they're doing. But my friend says that things are not getting any better, and everyone understands that they're going to get worse very soon. So they're kind of sitting there and seeing what is going on. Now, the second story is developing in the city of Rostov-on-Don. That's the city where I'm from. It's also in the south of Russia. Many of you have asked me this question. How do the problems in the economy, Russian economy, influence regular folks, regular people? Well, this is how. Bus routes in Rostov are being canceled. No more buses. Check this out. The search continues. Rostov authorities announced the cancellation of the route to Suvorovsky. That's a large part of the city. A few 100,000 people live there. Well, perhaps not a few hundred, but at least 100,000. Now, this news, as you see, was published at a local media called Rostov, about 161 RU, and it's from October 7th. So just 1 day old, 1 day fresh. So what's going on? The contract with the carrier has expired. Looking for a new one, but there's no one knocking on the door to get the new contract. No bids were received from transport companies willing to service this route. The search for carrier is ongoing. The city administration reported on Telegram channel. You know what's funny? There aren't too many companies in Rostov-on-Don who can service this contract because they all are somehow connected with the administration. Well, these companies that are performing the routes, performing the contracts right now, there are not too many. They're just a handful, and they were connected with the former governor and his administration, his people. I mean, everyone in Rostov knows that. That's where the money comes from. That's called corruption. Okay, and now they trying to find a company that doesn't exist because the administration made sure that all other companies not connected to them were just destroyed. Okay, so and I assure you, there will be no one assuming the bid. Well, giving the bid for this contract. Now, I really like the last. Uh, the last paragraph. The administration previously reported that two accordion-style buses, that's double buses, appeared on Route A1 on September 10th. Buses had not operated on the route during the summer, and the carrier was fined for this. Now, you won't find this news in any federal media. But this is a drama. Drama happening in Rostov in front of our eyes. People don't have any means of public transportation. And not too many people there. It's the new part of Rostov. It consists of dozens and dozens sky rises, huge ones, and that's where you can find the cheapest real estate. So people who move there, who buy apartments, they are not the richest. Okay, they don't have cars. Most of them don't, and they rely on public transportation. And canceling a bus route means that they don't have any means of getting into Rostov, into the center of the city, where they study, where they work, where they just have families. Now, that's one company flopped. And now the others are complaining. There are obviously other companies, transportation companies in Rostov. The carriers are demanding to raise the fare, bus fare, to 65 rubles, to basically double it. Several transportation companies in Rostov province are asking the authorities to immediately increase the tariff, the fare, by doubling it from 39 rubles to 65 rubles. Now, can you imagine the price of a product or a service that you use every day doubling overnight? It gets more interesting. There is an open appeal right now, something that doesn't happen ever. Because all business in the transportation industry, in the trash removal industry, it's hush-hush, behind closed doors. It's highly corrupted activity. Okay, now all these transportation companies step forward and do a public, open appeal. They basically demand to raise the fares from 39 to 65 rubles, to double them. They refer to the rise in fuel prices, check. Spare parts, rise of spare part prices, check. And decrease in passenger traffic, check. And they're right. It's not like they're demanding something unthinkable. According to these companies, diesel has risen to 69 rubles per liter, and methane gas that some buses are run on to 24. That's an incredible increase. At the same time, buses are operating on the edge, and the money only goes to cover debts and obligations. No maintenance, no repair, no taking care of the drivers. They are cutting the cost as much as they can. Companies complain that they cannot update their equipment, modernize the buses. They probably running on really bad tires now. As the paying period for new vehicles has increased, well, the lease period for the new vehicles has increased to 9 years. Carriers also complain about 6% drop in the number of trips over the year. It's just people travel less. And then it's obvious. If you watch Inside Russia, economic updates and live streams, you know that. That's called the demise, economic demise. That is called economic tsunami. And we're seeing it in numbers. Numbers do not lie. This indicates decrease in transport activity of residents. These companies also remind that in Moscow and St. Petersburg, the fare is 75 rubles, but their public transportation is subsidized from the local budget, whereas in Rostov it is not. And the result? Without a fare increase, travel in the fall and winter may be disrupted, they say. This public open appeal has been sent to the regional tariff service. The increase was supported by a few companies. They are Southern Transport Company, Yantarь 1, Автоколонна 1, and Express. Now, they're very real companies and there are real people behind them. If you go to Rostov-on-Don right now, you will see their buses running every single day. The 39 ruble tariff was placed in effect in 2023, and now it's the end of 2025. At that time, the residents also complained about shortage of buses and overcrowding, but not as much. Now it's become a catastrophe. Now, the fare price increased then in 2023 by 7 rubles, from 32 to 39. Now they're asking from 39 to 65, right? In my eyes, it's a drama for many, many people, especially older ones. But you know what? No one can say it was unexpected. Because basically, it's very simple. We are seeing now Russian people have started picking up the bill for Putin waging the war on Ukraine. They are paying for their inaction. They're paying for their political inactivity. They're paying for living in the informational bubble last 3.5 years and not even willing to understand what's going on outside their bubble. Well, guess what? The Russian state is knocking on their bubble and poking it actually with knives. And this is it. And you know what? It hurts. It hurts a lot. Now, I'm done with microeconomic agents. Let's go to the markets. Microeconomic analysis. And I'll start with oil and gas. Oil first. Now, a few things happened last week. One of the big ones, Emmanuel Macron, the French president, has taken a first step in, he's taken a very aggressive stance towards Russia. The French authorities arrested a tanker, a part of Russia's shadow fleet, for the first time, and they have held it. They have made it impossible for a Russian oil company to deliver their oil to India. Well, because they are pressing legal procedures, investigation, and so forth. They're holding the tank. It's a big hit to Russian oil industry. And that's what needed to be done in the very first place. Okay, I think that's what previous U.S. administration started doing just before, the term ended. Now America is silent ever since January, but Europe starts doing something. Well, that's very encouraging step. it's a huge hit to Russian economy because oil exporting is still incredibly large part of Russian budget. Now, other countries, other European countries, are going to follow the suit. At least that's what I heard. But I'll keep my eyes open and I'll definitely keep you on reporting about that. Now, the next news: Russian oil. Well, it's global oil, really. OPEC Plus. It's a oil cartel of oil extracting countries decided to increase oil production by 137,000 barrels per day last week. Prices aren't going up. They are at best staying at the current level, which is not too favorable for Russian oil. The Russian oil Urals is trading around below $60 per barrel. That's definitely not much, and it's not enough to sustain Russian economy. Now, gasoline. Well, of course, we've talked about it yesterday, lately a lot, and I've dedicated an entire live stream. If you haven't watched it, check it out. I gave lots of information, specifics, my analysis on the situation. Now, have been incredible amount of drone attacks on Russian oil refineries in the last 2.5 months. The fresh news is that Russia intends to start buying gasoline. And yesterday in a live stream, when I was discussing what happens next, I didn't know what to expect next because, they can't get enough gas. There will be shortages and they will be growing. So what do? The answer came shortly. They intend to start buying gasoline abroad. Now, right now, the current shortage is 400,000 metric ton. There are 3 companies. They are Rosneft, Promindustria Import, and NK plan to be buying 130,000 ton of gasoline per month. They are trying to buy from the Southeast Asia. And this is, they're trying to shuffle. What they're doing is gasoline shuffling. There are large oil refineries that are right in the center of Russia, if you look at the map, in Russia's east. Large ones in Omsk, in Novosibirsk. And they supply far east of Russia with gas. So what the Russian government is trying to do, they are trying to buy gas from the Southeast Asian countries. I'm not sure, I haven't heard which ones. Indonesia, Thailand, but they're trying to buy and deliver to the Far East. So those large oil refineries, instead of refining, supplying to the East, instead they retool towards the West, where the shortages are currently happening, when the war is happening, when the gas is needed. Now, will they succeed? We'll see. They might provide some amount of gas, but not much. And the biggest question here is, who's going to pay for it? Russian state, obviously. But does Russian state have money for that? No, it doesn't. Now, if we move to the southwest of Russia, to the south, really, Rostov-on-Don, the price of 1 liter of gasoline, that's about quarter of gallon, has risen to 73.9 rubles. That's almost $1. The residents complain about fuel shortages. According to Rosstat, since mid-September, fuel prices in Rostov province have increased by almost 1.5 rubles. That's a lot, considering if you look at how many percentage is that. So the regular has increased by 154 and the premium by 152. The residents of the province comment publicly a lot in the governor's Telegram and Instagram. Well, I don't think he has. I think he has only Telegram, as Instagram is illegal in Russia. So anyway, it's public social network. So they complain. They write in numbers that gas is simply unavailable in some parts of Rostov province. But where it is available, there are long queues and sky-high prices. The authorities acknowledge that there are supply disruptions in the northern parts of the province, and Rostov province is huge. It's like 1/3 of France. So they admit there are problems. They admit there are disruptions. But according to the authorities, there are reserves. And I love this part the best. Of course, there are reserves. I'm pretty sure that those reserves are being used for personal use of the governor and his people around him, his administration, for the KGB, for the state prosecutors, for the police officers. I'm sure of that. I'm sure they're not going to be used to go and serve people, but those reserves in the USSR was the same thing. I remember it well. They were reserves of everything. So USSR had plenty of everything, only in small quantities. And you could go and get blue jeans, nice clothing, and you could even get bananas in Rostov. For the first time, I saw bananas when I traveled to Moscow, but only if you were one of the leaders of the Communist Party, and the part of the nomenclatura. A dozen people or so had access to all those wonderful things. And right now, it's returning to Russia. The governor, of course, has access to any amount of gas or diesel he wants to get. The state prosecutor, the top KGB guy, they have gas, But others, they should be just feeling comfortable that there are reserves. That's how Russia works. Now, natural gas, there's another oops moment. It's actually first oops moment of today. And it's a big one. You see, Russia's bread makers, money-earning resources were always natural gas supplied to Europe and oil supplied to different countries. Now, we all know what happened to Russian natural gas. It's not supplied to Europe any longer, and Europe has successfully replaced it with natural gas from different countries, from other sources. Well, there are a couple countries that Russia still sells Russian natural gas to, and the biggest one among them is Hungary. Hungary, then Slovakia, Turkey, and there's even a pipeline called, I believe it's called Turkish Stream, from south of Russia on the bottom of the Black Sea goes to Turkey, and then through Bulgaria goes to Hungary. Well, the Europeans have finally made a major shift in the EU policy. They've decided to give up on Russian gas altogether. And as soon as that happened, Bulgaria decided that if there is a decision finalized by all European countries, Bulgaria would simply stop gas, would turn the valve off, going from Russia through Turkey to Hungary. And Hungary got scared because Hungary has been using cheap Russian gas. So Hungary needs gas, and it has a possibility of being stuck without gas in the future. So what did they do? They ran to Turkmenistan. That's a large country right next to Uzbekistan in the south of former Soviet Union. immense reserves of natural gas, and they started negotiating buying natural gas from Turkmenistan. For Russia, it's definitely an oops moment. Now, the Hungarians immediately signed a contract with NG, French liquefied natural gas company, the longest term contract in the history of Hungary, for 4 billion cubic meters of gas. Oops. And I remind you, when you're talking about the economy, you don't want to hear oops. Double oops. Now, again, let me remind you, before Turkey signed a similar contract for a long-term supply of liquefied natural gas with an American company. Right off the top of my head, I think it was Chevron. I could be wrong on that, but I think that's it. That's what it was. Now, the last thing about oil and gas today is that a very interesting situation is developing in Russia, and that's another oops. No, it's like oops, 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 something like that moment. The Russian government have always controlled prices of gasoline in at the pumps. Gas, bread, potato, very sensitive products. When people pay too much all of a sudden for them, or they have shortages, people get very angry. Okay, and then gas, obviously gas and diesel is among those necessary products. And this procedure of controlling prices is called demper in Russia. So Russian state basically subsidized prices and paid a certain amount, a large amount to Russian oil companies. So they artificially keep the prices low at gas stations. Last year alone, 2024, Russia spent 3 trillion rubles for that. That's, if the government didn't spend that money, the budget deficit would be covered. Okay, so basically it's burning money. Okay, but they don't want to make Russian people too upset. There is a decision or a plan that most likely will be realized to stop controlling prices of gasoline. Remember I told you a few minutes ago in Rostov, the prices are already sky high. Well, they're going to get much, much higher. This is an oops moment, a big one. Something to remember. If they carry on, I'm pretty sure they will stop controlling prices. They will stop subsidies going to major oil producers. That's going to be one of breaking points of Russian economy. So I'll be keeping my eyes open for that. Now, another oops moment, and a big one, is my gosh, it's funny. It's electrical energy. Now, I spent 20 years building power plants in Russia. I know the market quite well. And let me tell you, Russian market of electrical energy production and power generation, let's put it this way, because it's not just about energy, it's about steam produced and used in different industrial processes, and heat. Russian residents of all of the apartments, they get central heating. So I've never heard of big deficits of electrical energy in Russia. They were talks back in 2007. Russian economy was growing so fast, the industry was growing, that more and more electricity was needed. And a certain number of power plants existed and produced certain amount of electrical energy. And the government started taking notice of this rapid economic growth, and they forecasted a potential problem of deficit of electrical energy. Now, there were some parts of Russia that had deficit. For example, southern Russia, a couple provinces. I think the northwest was in deficit, but not big one. It was covered by power plants in other provinces. Now, there was a program back in 2007, a state subsidized program that promoted construction of new power plants. And about 42 gigawatt of electrical energy capacity was commenced by 2016. Okay, the program was called DPM, and we were part of this program. We built quite a few power plants. That was a very smart move by Russian state, I think, by current government. That prevented deficits, electrical deficits. Well, guess what? For the first time, on my memory at least, there is electrical energy deficit in Russia. Unbelievable. And that's not small one. Consolidated deficit, meaning the entire country, is lacking 25 gigawatts of electrical energy right now. 25 gigawatts. That's about 100 small to medium-sized power plants. 100. That's about 10 nuclear power plants, medium ones. Now, for the first time I've heard it. It's not a surprise to me, and to those of you who have been following this channel, because I've talked a lot about it, there is a big problem in utilities industry right now. And this problem is due to three major reasons. First is mobilization has taken lots of Russian men from the energy industry and threw them to the front lines. And many of them are dead, killed in Ukraine. It's not, problem number two, lack of maintenance, lack of spare parts. Most of turbines, modern turbines made by Siemens, General Electric, few, but not by Russian companies, and the spare parts are not supplied. Small ones they supply through Turkey, through China. Big ones, it's really hard to maintain them. Another problem is capital. Another problem is technology. And for the past 3.5 years, all these problems have been piling up. And now we are seeing the result of it. Currently, there's a deficit of 25 gigawatt of electrical energy. This information is official. It came from the Minister of Energy of Russian Federation. Moreover, the government is so concerned that it offers companies to reduce their power consumption, and the government will pay for that. The Ministry of Energy will pay for, well, federal budget, really. Now, the provinces with biggest problems right now is Dagestan and Siberia. Okay, they're the leaders in the deficit. Never before. Now it's happening. Now, this is an oops moment, a big one. This is the demise. Belgorod governor, a couple days ago, warned the residents of the province of the deficit of upcoming deficit of heat. Well, this is what you get when you start, shoot yourself in the food, another food, than in your stomach and your head, and you lay down and bleed. This is bleeding right now, okay? People don't have buses, people don't have electricity, people don't have heat. This is the demise. Many have asked me, what is demise? Well, this is it. Car manufacturing. Oh, I like that. I like that. I like this industry a lot. A lot of things are happening there. Now there is one company left, the big one called Avtovaz, that manufactures passenger cars, and the sales have they sell twice as little, half as much. There you go, half as many cars this year. So and the sales basically near zero, and Avtovaz was this huge plant with hundreds of thousands of people working there, or with the companies that are connected to Avtovaz, dealers and so forth. So the Avtovaz was forced to cut the work week from 5-day week to 4 working day week, starting September, and they did that. Well, obviously they need to cut costs, and payroll is the biggest cost. And people are not taking it. They started quitting Avtovaz en masse for one simple reason: they need money to live. And again, this is a demise. Okay, when you have salary until last month at Avtovaz at 120,000 rubles. That's average salary according to Avtovaz. I'm not sure how true this information is, but at least that's what I know. That is about 1,500 rubles, right? $1,500 per month. And now, all of a sudden, the price has dropped. The salary has dropped to 50,000, from 120 to 50,000, and 50,000 is about $700, $650, something like that. So, do you see the difference in how much people are getting paid? And everyone has mortgage, credit cards. Well, not everyone, but most of them. Bank loans. Perhaps they driving cars, car loans. And this is it. This is here. This is the demise. This is the economic tsunami. They're not, their products that they create is not sold. Therefore, the factory shuts down. Therefore, people don't have money. Therefore, they don't spend money. Therefore, businesses that are built around people are also losing sales. Therefore, they're paying less taxes, and this is a vicious circle. Okay, so that's car industry. There's another company, GAZ, Gorkovsky Автомобильный Завод. It produces trucks, and it also cut working week from 5 to 4 days, and people are getting about 20% less pay. Oh yeah, why at Avtovaz, work time is cut by 20% and the pay is cut by so much more? Well, it's because it's not just the hours; it's the bonuses, it's overtime, it's different extra payments that the factory did to different categories of workers and so forth. So now basically people are to bare minimum. Now I would like to mention retail. If you live in the West, you must have heard of a company called Decathlon. Now I've seen it in the United States, I've seen it in the United Arab Emirates, in Israel, in Thailand, even in Russia. Okay, they're everywhere. So this company left Russia, obviously after the start of the war, as most of Western companies did. And in place of Decathlon, a Russian company took its place, and it's called D-Sport. It uses the same logo, the same stores. Basically, D-Sport assumed all the contracts. And many companies did that in Russia. Now, it's been 3 years. And D-Sport now is closing doors. This failed decathlon replacement showed 720 million Russian ruble loss. That's about $10 million this year. And it has a large debt, and it's not paying rent to shopping malls where the big stores are usually Decathlons used to be, and now D-Sport. And they're not paying the suppliers. So the suppliers supplied goods, clothing, apparel, sporting goods, everything, and they're not getting paid. Business Russian style. So this company is closing. Goodbye D-Sport, goodbye Decathlon. Civil manufacturing. I don't know. Any of you know what PMI index is? The Purchasing Managers Index, PMI, is a monthly survey-based gauge of business condition in manufacturing and services. Now, readings above 50 indicate expansion, below 50 indicate contraction and decline, and 50, no change. They could guess what's happening with PMI index in Russia. And I'm surprised they're still monitoring it, because that Russian government bans all statistics it doesn't like, it doesn't find favorable. In August, PMI index was 48.7, and in September, 48.2. 4 consecutive months decline. That's pretty much how Russian economy is performing these days. I'm sorry, not the economy, but the civil manufacturing industry. Now, another news from manufacturing. What do you think is demanded most when there's a war? The country is waging a war. 2 things. Steel to make our guns, bullets, shells, tanks, planes, and microchips, because everything is, semiconductor is everywhere these days, right? Well, Russia's biggest microchip semiconductor manufacturer, Angstrom, showed the biggest loss among all Russian companies. The biggest loss. Number 1 among top 10 companies with biggest losses. The champion. Semiconductor that is being used in the military industrial complex. Now, it showed 236 billion ruble loss in 2025, and its revenue is mere 5 billion. It means that the company has stopped producing and selling their product. The loss is bigger than revenue by 47 times. Now, how can you bankrupt a company that produces microchips used everywhere in the army in time of war? You got to be very, very talented manager. Well, I'm glad, actually. You know what? I'm very glad Russia is full of these talented managers. I'm very glad that Putin is the geopolitical strategist of a genius caliber. I'm very glad that these people who steal Western companies, or pick them up for pennies on dollar, after the companies leave, they run them dry. In a couple years, they have bankrupted them. I'm glad. Russians were given a chance, and they showed one more time how well they are the managers, how well they run their businesses, how well they run the country. And I'm glad that Russian military is not getting chips from Angstrom as it could. So, banking, it gets even better. Banking. It's another oops moment. And this is quite quite the event that can actually bury everything and everyone. Now, I've said many times that I'm expecting the start of domino chain falling. First domino fell. It was bank in Crimea, number 63 in Russia by the size of assets. And the banking system is licking the wounds right now, in the central bank as well. Now, in August, there was 7% increase in mortgage defaults in 1 month. All mortgages in Russia issued by all commercial banks, 7% increase in defaults in 1 month. Now, in the year of 2025, in the first 9 months, including September, there has been a 120% increase in defaults. Oops. This is another oops moment. This is another. How do I even explain the magnitude of this disaster? Imagine people taking out mortgages and then they can't pay. Now, the banks repossess apartments, but banks cannot sell because this is a massive event where the supply is times or perhaps tens of times more than demand. Okay, therefore banks don't know what to do with their newly repossessed apartments. Now, what they're trying to do now to restructure, they're restructuring loans, mortgages, because defaults, delinquencies look really bad on their balance sheets, and they're trying to hang on as much as they can. They provide the information to Russia's central bank. If their information is alarming, then the central bank can take actions against banks with high default rates. So they're trying to restructure, but that tells me that the real situation in the market is much worse. So 7% in 1 month is sugar coated. Okay, in reality, it's much worse. Now, what do you do when all of a sudden when you own a bank or you manage a bank, and all of a sudden you face such huge threat, catastrophe, really? What do you do next? That's right. You start cutting costs as much as you can. And what is your biggest cost? Payroll, of course. Sberbank, Russia's largest bank, is conducting a massive layoff of IT personnel right now. And it explains it by the implementation of artificial intelligence, replacing the employees with AI. But most of the employees, you can't really fool them. They know what's going on inside the company. They're talking about cost cutting, the biggest cost cutting Sberbank has ever seen. I got this information from C News. That's media that covers IT news, including in banking. Okay, so Sberbank is firing various levels of expertise, employees of various levels of expertise, from juniors to team leaders, including testers, developers, and engineers. They're basically laying off most of its IT team, IT personnel. Now, one of top Sberbank's managers, on the condition of anonymity, confirmed this information. So that's sure thing. Now, according to the Telegram channel IT Workers Union, the layoffs affect about 25% of the staff. And some sources in the bank mention a figure of more than 5,000 people out of 40,000 IT specialists have been fired so far. And this is just the beginning. Okay. 8%. The bank's management calls the ongoing process optimization and explains it by introduction of artificial intelligence into business processes of Sberbank and replacing humans with agents and with AI. However, the employees are very skeptical about that. One of the employees on the condition of anonymity says, "I don't believe it's because of AI. In reality, the bank is cutting costs." And that's exactly what's happening. Banks are under a lot of financial pressure right now. Not even pressure. They are seeing the catastrophe. They are seeing the tsunami wave coming. I mean, you see it, but there's not much you can do. You start preparing yourself. That's what the banks are doing. At least Sberbank. Other banks either have been following without, we just don't know the information, or they will follow very shortly. Well, I have the next news for you. The next news is, despite being pressured by the Russian state, followed by the secret police KGB, and demonetized by Google for the reasons unknown to me, I'm still here. Shaken, but not broken. I will go on. You have my promise. Thank you very much for your great support, for precious time, for prayers, for love. Thank you for coffees you buy me at buymecoffee.com, for PayPal, Patreon. The financial support is much needed, very appreciated, never required though. Thank you very much. My thanks from the bottom of my heart. Every week I have at least one positive news for you. At least one. Okay. Only one. And this positive news comes from one industry that is doing better and better every day. And that industry is the funeral industry, because there are more and more customers created every day for this industry in Russia. Now, enough with microeconomics. Now I'd like to move to the next part, the third part of my analysis, and that's macroeconomic indicators. General health of Russian economy. And I'll try to be very brief here, so let's talk about macro stuff. Couple things, really. And the last thing is the biggest oops moment. 90% of Russian people admitted that their living standard has declined. They have admitted that they're poorer now than before the start of the war. Polling was done by one of Russia's largest polling company, and this information is reported by the Moscow Times. Oops, really? 90% have become poorer than before. I wonder why. Perhaps because Putin is doing such a tremendous job running Russia. Perhaps Russian economy is doing so much better by circumventing sanctions. Perhaps it's incredible technological breakthroughs and economical wonders. Perhaps because of that, huh? Or perhaps Russia has been waging the war on its neighbor for 3.5 years. That's a fresh thought for 90% of Russia. They didn't think about that. And perhaps they still don't. Some of them, most of them, they still don't. But some, at least, they start waking up. Good. And you know what? It's about time to take responsibility. And when you do that, That hurts. That's about time. Now, another macroeconomic news. Well, not necessarily. It's somewhere in between. Macro and micro. It's you decide where it is. 3 Russian provinces have defaulted their debts. Ulyanovskaya province, Adygea, Republic of Adygea, and Arkhangelskaya province. Now, Ulyanovskaya province is in the center of Russia. Arkhangelskaya, Archangel is the capital. It's far northwest. And Adygea is part of a Caucasus, a republic near Krasnodarsky Krai in the mountains of Adygea. Now, combined debt of these 3 provinces to the federal budget, to the state, was 7 billion rubles. And what Russian state did, it simply wrote the debt off. But if it didn't, these 3 Russian provinces would, go to bankruptcy. And that is a start. That's an oops moment. Big oops. One more reason for Russians to wake up, because that's not gonna stop. This is big. Remember those millions of rubles that provinces pay to those Russians who decide to sell their souls and go fight Ukrainians in Ukraine? Those payments come from provincial budgets, local budgets. And those are new types of expenses, unseen before. Well, guess who pays them? The taxpayers, right? The budgets of provinces. And this is it. 2025 is the time when most of provinces' budgets start sinking. I guess that's the best word I can find. So this is it. And the last but not least, Russia lacks money for the retirees. Wow. Now, this is huge. And this is probably the biggest sign, the biggest phase of the economic demise, of the economic tsunami so far. Russia has about 42 million people who are retired. And they get, every single month, they get pensions from the government. It's not like the government gives them pensions. They work for their pensions. They work hard all their lives. And in the 90s, the situation in Russia with finances was so bad that people did not get their pensions. The government the state delayed paying them pensions months at a time. Okay, and then people, especially older ones, they had really hard time surviving. Okay, and that is considered one of the biggest, darkest pages of the 90s, when older people couldn't afford to eat. That was a transformation period from communism to capitalism. I take it, I understand, I studied it, but they were hardships for many people. And definitely there were hardships for the retirees. And it was tragedy, really. Now things got better because transformation period was over in 1999. And Russia started growing. And everyone started earning more money. Everyone started living better. Economic growth was incredible. And the state had enough money to pay each retiree on time. And it has paid ever since, I'd say 98, 99 on time. And people are used to it. And the older folks, they recall the 90s. And it's like a dark memory for them because they didn't have any money. They didn't have pensions. I have heard so many times they say, well, you know what? We get paid on time. Do you know how it is to be living without money and you have to rely on somebody else, or and it's tragedy, and I understand. That's what they've told me many times. I understand where they're coming from. I understand why is it so bad for them. 2025, the end of the year. The deficit of nearly 780 billion rubles is expected in the pension fund, which will be the second highest record in history after 2022. Insurance contributors of 12 trillion rubles will only cover 70% of payments. And the federal budget will be able to allocate only 3.6 trillion. There is also shortage of funds in state medical insurance system, leading to discussions about canceling benefits for small businesses and contributions from the unemployed. Now, this is huge oops. It's beyond oops. Okay? This hardest time in Russian history, it seems like it has returned. They will pay the pensions for a few more months. After that, they simply don't have time. They don't have the money to do that. They already running the deficit, huge deficit. They already need 30% more than they have. Okay, and they're catastrophically running out of money everywhere else. They can't take to cover the pensions. I forecast 2026 being a very hard time, and I forecast pensions and salaries of federal employees, such as doctors, nurses, school teachers, kindergarten teachers, be delayed. And they don't make much. They don't their salaries are just few $100s, most of them. And imagine not having those money. That's gonna be a disaster for many people. At this point, I should be feeling bad for Russian people, but I'm very sorry to admit that I don't. I don't. Every one of us, I am also Russian. All of us, we have made a choice. I have made my own, and those people have made their choice. Uh, Choices are those things, we have to bear consequences of our choices. Bearing the consequences in my life, and they're doing the same in Russia. I wouldn't want to be them. Thank you very much for being with me today. Thank you for giving me a chance. Carthago delenda est.